Hi there. I'm Doug Calhoun, one of the co-authors of Spiritual Rhythms for the Enneagram, a handbook for harmony and transformation. And we've been doing a series of videos here on looking at what practices might help each number uh, grow in their journey with God. Uh, if you happen to be somebody who uh, is wanting to figure out how, as a number seven, how do I live in the world and how can I become, in our case, in our spiritual journey, more like Christ? The sevens, beloved sevens, as I write in the little note, uh, totally coined the phrase and own the phrase FOMO, fear of missing out. If you've been around a seven very much, you realize that somehow they have packed more in their schedule than almost any other number. Probably only threes could give them a run for their money. Sevens love to do just about everything they possibly can. And they also sort of collect things around them as they're doing stuff because they're just not sure if they're going to need that again. And they don't want to, miss out on having it. So sevens can not just have schedules that are chaotic and hectic, uh, whether they're written or not. They can also have sort of just physical spaces that look just a little bit disorganized. I think one of the reasons that is uh, as seven, they have this capacity to just imagine all kinds of things. So while I've been speaking, if you're a beloved seven, you've started listening to what I have to say, and somewhere along the way already you've thought of, well, I read a book about that, or I thought that in the movie, or I wonder if so-and-so's in, I wonder if I should call them a little bit later. Already coming up with something where your mind is off on a rabbit trail. So they can start something and leave it and then start something else. They can buy something, then they'll buy something else and end up with all manner of things in their lives. And this is especially true when it comes to just thinking about the way they do their life. So we're wanting to suggest some spiritual practices that, if this makes sense, instead of going from the inside out, which character leads to our fruit, these practices for a seven sort of go from the outside in, with the notion that when we're dealing with some of our physical spaces, it can help us not just physically, but then spiritually begin to focus. So for instance, our graphic that we produce that's also posted just nearby on our page is just doing some of the simple things of, in your living space, what would it mean for you? Instead of being often distracted and say, well, I'll get to that later, actually start doing some cleanup work. Now, what I would suggest here is you're channeling your harmony figure one, who is bound and determined to keep things clean. And so this is a way of you drawing on that energy of, how can I keep things ordered? So what would it look like if you, let's say if you have a desk, you may never ever sit at it, but I bet it doesn't look very clean and very orderly. What would it look like to sort of organize that clutter there and clean things up a little bit? Or if you are somebody who has got a closet that sort of defies the notion of California closets organizational pattern, what would it look like to clean out some of that? Maybe even pack up some of that stuff and give it away. Here's what that does to you. Remember, the sevens are always wanting more. Their vice is gluttony. So they're constantly thinking of, well, this will make me feel better. This will help me avoid pain. I don't want to think about difficult things. And so they can buy things just to ease some of that pain. And they end up inadvertently trusting in all this stuff. Whereas when we begin to say, wait a minute, if I look at this and start organizing it, I don't need all these things. I'm going to give these away. You begin to unhook your spiritual attachment to those things and the moreness of them. You realize, I have enough. I have enough. So it's interesting, the phrase for the ones when they're healthy is good enough is good enough. For the beloved sevens, their phrase is, I have enough. I've done enough. This is enough. So a way then to spiritually grow your own soul is to clean out some of these things physically and make space in your life where you're not sort of filling things up so that you don't have to feel or even observe that there's some emptiness in you. To embrace that emptiness in a way that gives God a chance to meet you in that emptiness instead of saying, well, maybe I should do this and just fill it up. It will be the case, dear sevens, that in that space, that openness, you may get in touch with some pains or discomfort. That's also a place to meet the suffering Christ who is with you in those very pain and suffering places, and to discover his love and care for you in a way that's even deeper than if you just filled them with some experience or another possession. Well, that's my take. I'd love to hear your take. If you've got comments, please don't hesitate to add them to the page here. And if you have enjoyed this, I hope you'll share it with somebody else on your page. God's blessings to you on the journey, beloved sevens, and all else who share that space with us around the Enneagram.